She held a first-class ticket, but the agent's sneer cut deeper than any blade. Economy line is over there. In that instant, a billionaire black CEO, one of the most powerful women in aviation, was reduced to nothing in their eyes. Phones hovered, whispers spread, and humiliation burned in her chest. But the silence that followed wasn't weakness. With a single gesture, she would flip the script, cancel the entire flight, and leave an airline empire trembling on its knees. The morning rush at Logan International buzzed with routine chaos, announcements blaring, luggage wheels rattling, and lines curling like serpents across the concourse. Among the crowd, Danielle Price, a striking black woman in a tailored navy suit, walked with quiet confidence. In her hand, she carried a first-class ticket. To most eyes, it was just paper. To her, it was validation of decades of brilliance, grit, and unshakable resilience. But to the airline staff at that counter, it meant nothing. "Economy line's over there," the check-in agent said, her voice clipped and dismissive. Danielle's eyebrows rose. She glanced down at the bold "first class" stamped across her boarding pass. "This is the first-class line," Danielle replied evenly. The agent's lips twisted into a half-smile. "Not today, it isn't." She waved to the back of the economy crowd, her tone sharp enough for others to hear. A few passengers smirked, assuming Danielle had been caught trying to sneak above her station. Heat crawled up Danielle's spine, but she didn't argue. Not yet. She simply slid her ticket back into her leather portfolio and stepped aside. The humiliation burned, but she stored it, knowing the reckoning was only a matter of time. At security, it continued. "Random screening," the officer declared, singling her out while white passengers streamed through without pause. At the lounge, the attendant shook her head. "Not on the list." At the gate, another sneer. "Business or economy? Because first class is full." Every step of the journey was a gauntlet of microaggressions sharpened into blades of disrespect. And when she finally reached the boarding door, the blow fell hardest. A flight attendant blocked her entry, palm out like a stop sign. "This line is for premium passengers only." Danielle held up her boarding pass, seat 1A. The attendant's smirk matched the agent's from earlier. "Then it must be a mistake." Laughter rippled from a few bystanders. Phones lifted, cameras ready. Danielle felt the sting of every eye cutting into her skin, stripping her of dignity. She could have argued, could have shouted. Instead, she did something far more dangerous. She went silent. Her eyes locked on the attendants, unblinking, unflinching. Then she slowly raised her hand, 2 fingers pressed against her portfolio in a gesture that looked meaningless to the crowd. But within seconds, heads turned. Gate agents glanced nervously at one another. Passengers whispered as a sudden tension rippled through the boarding area. Because that silent gesture wasn't meaningless at all. It was a signal. Within minutes, 2 men in tailored suits strode toward the gate. They weren't passengers. They were members of the airline's corporate security detail. They stopped dead in front of Danielle and bowed their heads slightly, acknowledging her presence. The crowd went silent. "Is there a problem, Ms. Price?" one asked. The attendant's smirk crumbled. She doesn't belong in this line. I was just enforcing policy." Danielle finally spoke, her voice calm yet lethal. "Policy? Interesting. Would you like me to explain your actual policy to the board of directors? Or should I let them watch this live stream first?" She gestured to the dozens of phones recording. Murmurs swelled. The attendant's face drained of color, because in that moment, the truth clicked into place for everyone watching. Danielle Price wasn't just another passenger. She wasn't even just a wealthy first-class traveler. She was one of the largest shareholders of the airline, an executive whose influence reached deeper than any CEO's handshake. And she had just been humiliated in public. When Danielle finally boarded, she didn't sit quietly. Instead, she turned her phone camera on herself and spoke 3 words that would ignite the internet. "Ground this flight." The cabin erupted in confusion. Pilots were ordered back to the gate. Passengers fumed. And within the hour, Clips of Danielle's calm command flooded social media feeds. Hashtag grounded by truth trended worldwide. News anchors scrambled to explain why an entire plane sat idle, while a woman in seat 1A stared out the window with unnerving calm. But the real storm came days later. At an emergency board meeting, Danielle arrived with a stack of documents under her arm. Emails, reports, testimonies, all proof of systemic discrimination buried under random checks and policy enforcement. She laid them on the table like daggers. "This isn't about one flight," she said, her voice slicing through the boardroom silence. "This is about a culture of humiliation that you've allowed to fester. You've targeted passengers who look like me, penalized employees who speak out, and rewarded executives who bury the truth. That ends today." The CEO shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Price, with respect, you can't just—" She cut him off. "I own 20% of this airline. I can and I will." Gasps circled the table. Board members exchanged uneasy glances. She wasn't bluffing. Her portfolio made her one of the largest single stakeholders in the company. Danielle turned to the shareholders present. "You've all seen the videos. You've read the reports. You know what this is costing us. Financially, legally, morally. Today you decide. Protect a corrupt system or protect your company's survival." When the vote was cast, it wasn't close. The CEO was suspended. An independent investigation launched. And Danielle, though offered the interim CEO role, refused. "I don't need a title," she said. "What I need is accountability." Instead, she created a new Council of Ethics and Inclusion, led not by executives, but by frontline employees, the very people who had seen the discrimination up close and suffered under it. She tore down the bonus system that rewarded enforcement and replaced it with incentives for fairness, service, and transparency. 6 months later, the results were undeniable. Complaints of discrimination plummeted. Employee satisfaction soared. Passenger loyalty rebounded. And Danielle's silent gesture at that boarding gate became a global symbol, proof that dignity, when defended with courage, can topple even the most arrogant of systems. Back at Logan International, on the anniversary of that fateful flight, Danielle walked once again toward the premium lane. This time, the attendants straightened as she approached, greeting her with respect that went beyond words. She handed over her boarding pass without a word, her eyes steady, her silence powerful. Because silence had once been forced upon her. Now it was the weapon she wielded. And the world had learned, never mistake quiet for powerless. If this story shook you, hit like, share it everywhere, and subscribe now. Drop a comment with where you're watching from.